Hey guys, got a pretty exciting day planned out here in the shop. We will be tearing into the RM250 engine. This is for the 2001, or actually 2002, as we come to find out, RM250 that'll be building up on the channel over the next few months. And then when I'm all finished up with it, I'll be doing a giveaway with it. So if you want to enter that giveaway, hit the link down below. So back here, we have the engine for it. Top end's already off of it, but judging by the condition of the rest of the parts back here, we're probably in for some surprises with the engine. So why don't we tear into it? So I bought this bike with the top end already off the engine, and I'm guessing there's something going on. I haven't really had the chance to take a look at it yet, but let's take a peek. So the piston, the Wiseco, there's definitely some wear and damage going on here. You can see that ring land is kind of messed up. There's a ring stuck in there. Cylinder head, tiny bit of pitting, nothing too crazy. Now this is what I am worried about, a scraped up bore. Doesn't actually look too bad. Let me get some light on it. There's a little bit of corrosion and rust in there. Maybe some scrapes right there near the intake port. Wow, that's actually not too terrible. Oh boy, we do have a little bit of wear above the exhaust port. Oh, what the heck is going on here? There's some chipping right there on the edge of the sleeve. I wonder what that could be from. Actually, it's probably from the ring breaking and then getting smashed between the head and the cylinder. See if there's anything on the head there. So the head goes on like that. So it would be around here. Yep. Oh, there's some chipping away right there. But I think the head is fine. The cylinder is going to need some repair. I'm gonna have to send this one out to either get re-sleeved, replated. I don't know, we'll have to figure out exactly what we're gonna do with that. But we have a whole bottom end to tear apart, so let's rip into this right now. So I'm gonna tear into the flywheel side first. Usually there's not much in the way of surprises under here. Found our first damaged part. That didn't take too long. Got some JB weld inside the cover here. Go ahead and pop this flywheel nut off. The nut's kind of jacked up. So I'm just gonna hold the rod with my hand, give this thing a crank. Oh man, this day is just starting out sweet. Someone really hacked up that nut. All right, we're 2 for 2. Nuts trash. Flywheel cover's trash. Now we've got a flywheel puller. This just reverse threads into the flywheel. Crank her down. Make sure it's as far down as you can get. You don't want to rip the threads off of there. Give it a little zap with the impact. Off she goes. The flywheel looks good. A little crusty on the outside, but at least the magnets aren't damaged. Now we've got a couple bolts for the stator. It's always a good idea to kind of eyeball where the stator is at before you pull it apart. You kind of see down here, there's a marking to line up with the crankcase. Looks like that's dead on, so when we put it back together, we'll just refer to that. All right, stator looks fine. A couple little scrapes, but that's a big relief. Pull the lifter arm out. I'm gonna pull off this front sprocket before I flip the engine over and start on the clutch side. So that's it for the ignition side. Let's go after the clutch side. Let's go ahead and check out this water pump first. Probably not a whole lot we're gonna find in here. All that looks good. You can pop off this water pump impeller. Some bikes, it is reverse thread like this one. So you want to be really careful not to strip this thing out or mess up the head on it by going the wrong way. Now we've got the clutch cover or outer clutch cover. And when I'm pulling all these bolts off, I like to just separate them and put them in a labeled Ziploc bags. Ooh, we might have a Hinson basket in here. That would be a huge plus. I see some black clutch fingers. But take a look at what's inside this clutch cover. It looks like metal bits. That might not be good. I don't know, it doesn't really feel like gritty. Sometimes these covers need a little love tap with a rubber mallet. There we go. There's a dowel up in this corner that was pretty crusty. Here we go. See what we find in here. So like I said, there's this little locating pin here that gets crusty over time and kind of makes these covers stick. So very important to replace those. That way everything just goes together smoothly. We got a couple more shavings here. I'm not really sure what that is. At this point, the water pump shaft just pops right out. So when you're pulling apart an engine, I would recommend just pulling everything apart on it to inspect it. Obviously, if you're gonna split the cases, you might as well pull everything apart just to double check. You don't wanna put something back together and realize you missed something. So this inner clutch cover looks pretty good, although I did notice on this little nub here, I don't know if you guys can see that, there's some scraping and wear on it, and then some more scratches right here. So it seems like something was bouncing around in this engine at some point. So over here we have the power valve governor shaft. This just pops out. Now before I tear into the clutch, I'm gonna loosen up the bolt for the primary gear. Now on some bikes, these are a right-hand thread. I believe on this one, it is just a regular thread, so go left. Oh, that one wasn't even that tight. Now I'm really curious to check out this clutch. It looks pretty fresh, judging by the plates in the basket, but we'll see once we're inside. You wanna loosen up these pressure plate bolts evenly. So just like a wheel on the car. Go ahead and pop this thing up. So you only wanna pull the pressure plate off right now. That way we still can pull off the inner nut there. And we've got the push rod that goes through the center. So right here, there is part of the washer that you bend up to hold that nut in place. So we're gonna take a screwdriver, hammer, and knock that back down. And then for this nut, you need a big ass socket for it. Looks like a 30 mil. And then you can just give her the berries. And now the entire clutch just slides right off. We've got a bushing and a roller bearing underneath. All right, let's pull apart this clutch and inspect it. So we do have a Hinson basket, sweet. That is a big plus. These are a billet material, so they last much longer. And it appears like the fingers are in pretty good shape. A little bit of notching. You can barely feel that with your fingers. So definitely a reusable basket. And now for the inner hub and plates. Separate these. See if there's any notching here in the splines. No, that all feels pretty good. Nothing on the surface either. Sweet. Oh, all these plates are stuck together, but they actually look pretty fresh. I don't see any heat markings or heat coloring on the steels. Fibers, looks like they got plenty of meat left on them. So this build is more of a budget type project. So I'm hoping to reuse as many of these parts as possible. So looks like I'm in luck with the clutch. Now the primary gear off the crank pops off. Ooh, looks like the end of the crank has some hammering on it. Let me zoom in and show you. Yeah, not too good. I don't think that'll affect the usability of the crank though. We'll see once we dig in further. Again, we can see more of this kind of crummy looking oil. It's got all these bits in there, but they're not gritty. I'm kind of thinking that's just really sludgy oil. From the other side of the engine, we can push out the shift shaft. Slides right out. On these shafts, what to look for is it being bent. That one looks nice and straight. And then also damaged splines on the end. All right, we've got a couple little things pop up here. These screws that hold the gear shift mechanism are a little jacked up, a little stripped out. And then the post for the shift shaft return spring is also loose. You can see that thing is just about to thread out on its own. I had a little heads up from my buddy Josh. He told me about these things coming loose, gave me a heads up on it. So yeah, Josh, you were right. Now we gotta figure out how we're gonna get these stripped out screws out of here. So we're gonna go at it with this impact screwdriver. Got a nice tip on the end here that'll fit good in there. And we'll just have to cross our fingers. That saved us from a lot of hassle having to drill out that screw. Now with these gear shift mechanisms, there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of pins and springs. So you want to be really careful when you're pulling it out, that way you don't lose them. And also, if it falls apart, you're not going to really have a good idea of how it went together. So just pull it out nice and smooth, pull off the plate here. And I'll kind of show you what I was talking about. There's a pawl on the end of it. You've got a pin. And then inside of that hole there is a spring. So same on both sides. Now we have a few more pieces with the shift assembly, a little tensioner arm and the center pin, as well as this outer piece. Now the center pin is held in by red Loctite, which is really strong stuff. Sometimes you got to heat them up to loosen them up, but we're gonna see what we can do with an impact. Doesn't even look like there was much Loctite on there. Let's wiggle this thing free. Now the tensioner arm is held in by a single bolt and spring. You might even want to release that tension before you pull that bolt out. Holy crap, this oil is so sludgy. Now for the power valve shaft, I like to use an impact screwdriver on this as well. So I'm going to swap out the number 3 bit for the number 2. This one fits a little better in there. Oh yeah. Yeah, these impact screwdrivers are the bomb. You guys gotta go pick one up. I will have these things linked down below in case you guys don't have one. They are a lifesaver. Just gonna fish this out of there. All that looks good. And then for the kickstart assembly, just pop off the idler gear. Looks like we've got a washer on top of there. And then the actual kickstart shaft. Just lift it straight up. There's a spring and a gear underneath. Cool, all that looks good. Oh shoot. Just noticed that we got a busted up case here. Thankfully that's not in the structure at all. I don't think that'll be a huge problem. I should be able to just kind of grind that down, smooth it out, and we'll be good. There's also a bunch of scrapes up here too. Now, some of you guys might have heard I am putting $1,000 up for grabs in a bike build contest being held this winter. It's open to anyone and everyone. Any motorcycle is welcome. You can be any age. You can live anywhere in the world. So what we're going for here is a biggest transformation. So you have until April 15th to get your bikes done. So in 4 months from now, you could have a completely fresh bike and a couple extra $100 in your pocket. So it's a win-win. If you want more info, hit the link down below. I got a cool little clip for you guys. Check this out. That was done by my buddy Nick. He does a bunch of stop motion animation with dirt bikes actually. So he'll take apart an engine or suspension and it's really cool looking. It just looks like it falls apart on its own. So if you want to check out his work, go down below and hit the link. All right, so at this point we are ready to split the cases. We just got some bolts to pull off on this side. Let's go ahead and spin these out right now. Alright, this is the sketchy part. So Suzukis are notorious for soft transmissions. So the gears like to eat away and just wear out quickly. So as soon as we split the cases, we'll know whether or not this transmission is good to go. Now before I give the case splitter a shot, I always like to tap on the crank with a soft hammer. Yeah, this thing is kind of crusty. We're gonna have to use a splitter. All right, so to set up the splitter, lay the engine flat, slide the splitter over, and you want these 3 arms spread out evenly. So, something like that. Snug them down. Make sure you got plenty of thread in those cases. And then you want all 3 of these nuts cinched down evenly. So I like to leave about, I don't know, 1/4 inch above the splitter. And then just get after it with the impact. After you apply some torque, look for the case splitting at all. You want to make sure it goes evenly, but it helps to give the puller a little tap with a hammer. We're splitting. After a couple zaps with the impact, just look around, make sure it's splitting evenly. Looks like we're good. Sometimes this counter shaft can be a little stuck in there. Now we're just gonna be really careful pulling this thing off of here. We want to keep everything together as much as possible. And you can just weasel it right off. And then as soon as I pull this side crankcase off, I like to check inside for any washers. This washer was on the counter shaft. Put that back on just so we don't misplace it. All right, now we can get to work pulling apart the transmission. So I'm gonna pull out the pins for the shift forks. You wanna keep these all together. Got one more on this side. Pop the drum out of there. Get this other fork out of there as well. And now both shafts and all the gears will just pop right out. So have your hand on the other side of the crankcase. Give it a little push. Kind of tilt the crankcase down, that way all the gears stay on the shaft. I'm really gonna have to get up close and inspect this thing. I wanna make sure all these gears are in good shape. And then all that's left is the crankshaft. Sometimes these just come right out with a little help with a rubber mallet. That was a little more than a little help, but did the trick. That looks like we have an OEM crank, which is good. Now with the engine completely apart, I'm gonna go through, inspect everything. I'm gonna pull out all the bearings. I will be replacing all the bearings and seals. It only makes sense to do that while you have everything apart. So I'll go through these things gear by gear, looking at the face of the gear, also the top edge, make sure that's not chipped. I'll also check out the little transfer nubs here, or the dogs in between. It's pretty common for those to get rounded off. Surprisingly, this thing actually looks really good so far. I don't see any reason why I'd need to replace anything. Just gonna do the same thing on the main shaft here. Ooh, I do see a little bit of wear on these transfer pegs. Yeah, I might need to pull these apart and either file them or replace that gear. Let me show you guys what I'm talking about here. So these 4 pegs have a little bit of a rounded edge on each one. I do see a little nick in the gear on this tooth right here, just on the face of it. So everything on this shaft looks pretty good besides that one gear. These little nicks here just aren't severe enough to worry about. That's fairly normal, but for this gear right here, I'm gonna have to do some filing, or if it's really cheap, I'm just gonna replace it. Now, a couple more things to inspect are the shift forks. You wanna look at the tips of them, as well as the top edge. If they're all scraped up, probably wanna replace them. Both of these look good. Also gonna check out the shift drum. It does happen from time to time. I'll see it once in a while where there'll be a little chip in the grooves here. This one looks good. Okay, so she's all stripped down. We've got quite a bit of work ahead of us here. Got some stuff to fix up or replace. So the cylinder will need either a re-sleeve or replate. I gotta figure that out, see what people think about it. The piston is trash. Crankshaft, that is an OEM Suzuki crank. Those are pretty solid. I might send it out to have it rebuilt with a new rod and rod bearings. If you guys have any recommendations there, leave them down below. We'll need to replace that worn out gear on the tranny. Let's see, the right crankcase. I think we should be able to smooth that out, call it good. That isn't gonna hurt anything with that chip there. And then get a new ignition cover. I think that's pretty much it. So obviously new bearings, new seals, gaskets, and just wear items. Now on the bright side of things, the clutch is actually in really good shape. I should be able to reuse the basket, the hubs, plates. I need to measure those out to make certain of that. Clutch cover was good. Water pump is solid. So all in all, not too bad. Come to think of it, I do need to pull apart this power valve, see what kind of shape that's in, see if I need to replace anything there. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Sometimes these power valves can have quite a lot of pieces to them, so make sure you take some pictures or have a video as you're taking it apart. There's a little nick on the edge of this valve, or like more like wear. Should be able to just smooth that out and call it good though. It's very minor. Yeah, that's really not deep enough to worry about. We should be fine. And one last thing. Let's take a look at these reeds. Not too bad, not too bad. Yeah, nothing chipped up or cracked there, surprisingly. Okay, now I can say that the cylinder is completely bare. Now we just gotta figure out exactly what we're gonna do with it. So like I was showing you guys earlier, there's a good sized chunk out of the sleeve right there. So either we're gonna need a sleeve, or I really don't know what else we're gonna do there. I don't think a replate would fix that. All right, so I've got a mess on my hands I need to clean up here. And once I get that tidied up, I'm gonna transition back over to this stuff and just kind of break things down a little bit further. After some more teardown, sad to say, we have a few more casualties here. Swing arm is pretty freaking beat up. You can see back here, that is not good. Those things are all wallered out on both sides. And there's something else going on here too. Oh, the mount for the brake carrier, that thing's all chipped up and worn away. So I'm afraid this swing arm, it is not going to be able to be reused, so I'll have to find a different one. And then over here we've got some more busted up stuff. The bar mounts Had some janky bolts in here. These things are all bent up. Look how floppy this one is. That's pretty bad. And the damper rubbers, those things are pretty hammered. And then we've just got regular wear and tear items. Chain and sprockets, chain guides, cables, grips, bent lever. So the parts list continues to grow. Hopefully we can find a swing arm on eBay for cheap. That would be the best option. Actually, one more issue over here. I was pulling some stuff off the rear wheel and noticed all these spokes are really loose and there are a couple broken ones. And of course, the bearings are pretty shot too. Now at this point, I have a pretty good idea of everything that's busted up and needs to be replaced. I've got a big long list of parts here. So it is time to start submitting some orders. But I think right now I'm going to focus on the engine stuff first. So send out the crank and cylinder for rebuild, order up everything I need for that, and then I can move to the suspension parts, stuff for the wheels, all the bearings, and brake parts. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I had a ton of fun tearing down this engine, kind of going through and seeing what's all busted up. But I'll be seeing you all in some future videos where we'll be doing some parts cleaning, replacement of bearings and seals, and some coating. So lots of great stuff on the way. And until then, keep it prime.